guys, it's Mark and Yuri again. You're listening to Man and Machine podcast Xtreme, our little Centurions themed podcast. Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Going pretty well, Yuri. How's it going with you?
Awesome. Pretty good. I was really happy that our last episode did really well. So thank you guys for tuning in. We were discussing the 80s Commanders line of Centurions toys. Let's call them tribute toys, third party toys of the three main figures. And yeah, a lot of you, almost 1,000 listeners. That's a way better number than we had before. So thank you for tuning in. We plan on having more interviews in the near future. Hopefully, also dealing with cartoon, potentially writers and voiceover artists who worked on the cartoon, and maybe if there are more third-party toys on the way, those the creators of those toys, designers, are also welcome to come on the show. And yeah, Mark, any news that you heard of regarding Centurions?
No, we're just all waiting for the 80s Commanders to come out and see what happens then.
Definitely. And I think those are scheduled to come out or start shipping in October-ish.
Yes, and when that happens, I'm sure that we will have a lot of comments on them.
Yeah, actually, we could spend a few minutes on that. So it was a big question, I think, for the people who were considering ordering them, whether ordering something and paying everything up front for a really good deal. I think it was, instead of $90, they gave you a $20 discount on each of the figures if you paid up front even before production began. Do you think basically investing that much money and giving that to a company that hasn't produced figures yet is actually a smart thing, because you save a lot of money on the toys? Or would you consider that risky?
Well, I don't know if I call it a smart thing, but it might be a necessary thing for these people to get the money they need. And we're just all waiting with bated breath to see what happens with this line, and we're all hoping for the best, and that the line will come out and people will be happy with it, and it'll be financially successful enough to continue. But but right now, who knows?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's really great that, both Jarek's Lego brick type figures and the 80s Commanders kind of came out, or are coming out, basically a year apart. So maybe new people will show up and create, rival products, or not just necessarily figures, but other, merchandise or designs. I actually, by the time you guys listen to this episode, it will probably be all over. But on one of these t-shirt sites, it's called redbubble.com. There are some independent artists who, of course, they don't have the copyright, but they have these Centurions designs, and I've previously bought some shirts from them. So I'm about to, because they have a sale on the site, so I'm about to buy some Centurions shirts, and they have some really cool designs, original designs, not ripped off boxes or anything. And so yeah, there are shirts out there now, unlicensed, of course. There are action figures coming our way, so who knows, maybe this will be a sign towards Hasbro to if they can sort out the copyright issues, maybe bring the show or the toys back some way.
Yeah, Hasbro or whoever the rights holder is.
Definitely. And speaking of rights, of course, we discussed this before, that half of the rights probably belong to Hasbro, which inherited Kenner's, licenses and IP, and the rest is, of course, related to the cartoon, which was Ruby Spears, now Warner Brothers. Yeah. And so Mark is an expert on the show, actually, since he is has the Bible, and you are basically really familiar with the story. So today, what we planned for you guys was that we would discuss, potential ideas, or how we would reboot the show, or continue the show, or create a new Centurions show. In today's world, what it would look like, what kind of characters we'd have, and Mark has different perspectives on it. I have different perspectives on it. So yeah, let's get to it. Mark, how would you picture in Mark's world? How would you start a new era of the Centurions cartoon?
Well, for one thing, there's already an opportunity which has probably been missed, but I mean, we'll see what happens. If the Centurions are co-owned by Warner Brothers, I'm just wondering if they're going to be part of the big Warner crossover in the forthcoming Space Jam: A New Legacy, which of course would lead to the inevitable line, "What's up, Doc Terror?"
Ouch. Ouch. So I haven't heard of that. So what is that about?
Yeah, we'll just make this quick because it's a tangent, but Space Jam: A New Legacy is a sequel to the original Space Jam movie that is scheduled to come out in July. It has LeBron James meeting the Looney Tunes, and they do a basketball battle for the fate of the world. And the gimmick with this one is that it takes place inside this an evil AI played by Don Cheadle takes them inside this server that, like, I guess has all the Warner Brothers characters. So they're meeting everyone. There's references to everything from Gone with the Wind to the Flintstones to A Clockwork Orange to Casablanca to basically anything that is owned by Warner Brothers that is recognizable.
So you think if this take on their franchise or their IPs becomes successful, that the Centurions might do a cameo or some sort of a bit part in the whole thing?
Well, I mean, of course, the movie's already made by now. We're just waiting for it to come out. So they're either in it or they're not. And I would love for them to be in it, but I'm not expecting it. And even if they were in it, it would probably just be a thing where they're in the audience watching the game with all the other Warner characters. I mean, really, there was more of a throwaway joke, but I mean, if they did it, that's great. If not, well, we'll just have to see if we can rekindle interest in the Centurions some other way, like we've been talking about all along.
Yeah, so definitely that's an option. Um, who knows? But what would your take be if you could redesign, or you could update the show for today's audience? How would you picture that? How would you design it? If it's only you're the head designer, or you're the lead um, writer or the showrunner, how would you picture that?
Well, for me, the number one, the three main things I would do are characterization, and characterization. Yeah, I mean, Centurions had a pretty small cast compared to a show like GI Joe or He Man, but it didn't do very much with with the three characters and the villains. I mean, it was always Doc Terror wants to take over the world. The Centurions have to stop him. The end. Occasionally, you get an episode like "You Only Love Twice," which is about Crystal's past, and Doc Terror bring back a hologram of her missing and assumed deceased boyfriend. But yeah, for the most part, they didn't do that, and I would make sure that you got to know more about the Centurions and their enemies as people. What motivates them. What drove them to become the best in their fields. What drove them to want to take over the world or want to stop someone from taking over the world. What are their families like? That sort of thing.
And it's actually interesting. I'll present my own take on the subject. But it's actually interesting. A lot of great villains, especially when it comes to comic book characters, have had storylines where you actually see that they have a personal tragedy that makes them bad guys, but they're kind of like also victims of a bad series of events. I think for me the best example, or my favorite, was Dr. Octopus, or Doc Ock, from I think the first batch of Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, where he had like a personal tragedy with his wife. I'm not a big Marvel geek, so basically I at least the movie presented it like this. I'm not talking about the cartoons or the comic books. So
Original comic, yeah.
yeah, and Alfred Molina was a brilliant actor for that role. I know that was just my favorite villain, and so basically, I wonder if it would be an interesting spin to have Doc Terror be actually a victim, and he's like, we know that in the cartoons, what was it called, the better half, or when Uniborg was created or kind of merged accidentally.
Yeah, that was the Uberg episode, the better half parts 1 and 2.
Yeah, so basically, just present the story in a way that he's not a bad guy per se, but basically fusion with the machine and some malfunction, just like in Spider-Man with Doc Ock. It would be that would trigger him turning evil or something. That would be an interesting take. That you see a human side, you see a good side of the guy, turning bad.
Yeah, that's actually the way they played Lord Dredd on Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future.
I'm not familiar with that. Is that an 80s show, or that's a new thing?
No, yeah, that was an 80s show. It was done in 1987, the year after Centurions. It was actually live action. This is the one that was controversial in its time because the toys actually interacted with the TV show through signals sent to the broadcast. But yeah, yeah,
Wait,
Lord
the
Dredd.
toys interacted with the show?
Yeah, I mean, like you could get a beam from the TV show that would register on your vehicle and things like that.
Huh.
But yeah, and this is another tangent. But yeah, the thing is that yeah, Lord Dredd, like Doc Terror, was a cyborg who wanted to take over the world. I mean, it just that the plot of Captain Power, that he actually succeeded, and the heroes were a resistance movement who wanted to overthrow his machine tyranny. But yeah, I mean the thing is, he was actually a decent person once, but then he merged himself with the Overmind, I think it was called, the evil computer, and that changed him.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think the 80s was really the time when I'm not really that cultured when it comes to sci-fi literature, but I actually don't know when the classics of cyberpunk have been released, uh, but like Philip K. Dick, maybe. But it was a time when a lot of these subjects became popular, especially in entertainment, like cartoons and movies. And think of like Terminator, which is, of course, in a different way, is showing living flesh on cold metal. So basically, it's something that was topical back then. So maybe there were even more cartoons. Can you name like other cartoons that had similar themes?
I can give you an example that is much closer to home. Do you remember the Centurions episode Zone Dancer?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was a really great cyberpunk story. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What the writer Michael Reeves did is he basically took Philip K. Dick's well, Blade Runner was the name of the novel, but he took the movie based on the novel, and he took the novel that started cyberpunk, William Gibson's
Mhm.
Neuromancer, and he took plot elements of from both of them, and he put the Centurions in the middle of it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I have to catch up on my Centurions things. So essentially, we can say that the themes depicted in the Centurions cartoon were actually topical, ideas of the 80s. So what subjects do you think would, if you wanted to make um, the show current, what kind of current themes of science or of technology or of social changes or whatever, what do you think would be appropriate for the show, that the stories would discuss?
Oh boy. Well, I've discussed this before on the group, and well, there's been a bit of controversy about it. But I mean, if I have your permission to go ahead, I will.
Sure, it's Mark's take. It's Mark's spin-off, so go for it.
Okay. Well, we might do a little more with climate change because it looks like that's not going away anytime soon. Yeah, the show would do stuff like that occasionally, like tornado terror, let the lightning fall. I think those are both episodes where terror tried to use natural disasters to accomplish his goals. I don't know, so maybe we could do more of that. And
Hmm.
also, as I said before, I mean, yeah, the Centurions were, were five American guys, four white, one Native American. I would say, if you're going to do new characters, is in addition to the originals, and I think there's no
Hmm.
reason why
Hmm.
you shouldn't like him. Why not have a female Centurion or an African American Centurion or a Japanese Centurion or what have you?
Right.
I mean, even in the writer's guide, Ted Peterson says it was going to be an international team and that there's going to be women on it. I mean, that never happened in the show. I wish it had. And if someone made me the king of Centurions, I would say, well, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm my take on the reboot, or not reboot, but a new series would be that I'm a traditionalist, so I would prefer to have the same characters, the same, Crystal being the kind of the operator for the guys, and I would just want to see it maybe with some new art, but really being faithful to the original. And but I do find it interesting that they intended it to be a multi-gender international team. Apparently, if you say so, I trust you. And none of that happened.
Yeah, I've been meaning to upload the writer's guide eventually. And the thing is, I think this is all plans for the future if the toys sold and the TV show did well. And obviously, none of that happened. And I'm not saying get rid of the Centurions we have now. I'm just saying add more.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about a lot is that most most bases are covered. So we have an air specialist who's also a space specialist. We have a water specialist who is, oh, there's not much else to do with water. There's a ground specialist who also is who has a helicopter essentially with Hornet. So okay, then they expanded that to an infiltration specialist, which is interesting, but I honestly have doubts about how much of an infiltration specialist John would be, because he has a huge ass crossbow on his back, and rolls on, like, I think it's six wheels, or it's a tread, like he has treads, right?
Well, if you're talking about Thunder Knife, yeah, the thing has tank treads on
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, he has basically, I think, maybe the biggest base that the Centurions toys have, because most stand on, like on the figure's feet. There's detonator, of course, with the two big, stabilizer feet at the sides, but John's, gear is basically the heaviest. And I'm kind of like, why is that infiltration specialist? And so there's Rex, who's like, okay, energy specialist, but a lot of the weapons that the Centurions already used had energy projectiles or energy, weaponry. So I'm wondering how far we can expand this, or what other dimensions would be there, because you could say, oh, Rex is, the beam specialist, energy specialist. We already have energy weapons, so should we also have a demolition specialist, even though most of the guys already have, explosives on their gear?
Well, yeah, I mean, your cutting is fine, but see, here's the thing. If Centurions had taken off the way they expected to, I guarantee you that Kenner would have been coming up with this specialist and that specialist as long as they could sell the toys to the kids. And I mean, you look at GI Joe; they have a specialist for everything.
Oh Jesus, yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of GI Joe, and I'm totally, for having as many GI Joe toys as possible, or but that was ridiculous. Like, there was a battlefield news guy. Like, he had a camera.
Oh
There
yeah,
was
Scoop.
a yeah, there was like these weird specializations that, like, I don't know if they actually existed. There was even like a guy with an experimental weapon. It was a camera rig, one of those like seamless. I don't know right now what it's called, but it like that seamless camera rig on his belt, on his torso, that he could carry like a light machine gun on it.
Huh.
Um, like a gimbal. It's not a gimbal. There's a name for it. I apologize. I don't remember it right now. But like a Steadicam. Yeah, it's he was a Steadicam gunner, and I'm like, that exists. Theoretically, there people made that rig, but yeah, I'm wondering how far the Centurions could be stretched to still make sense, or what could be added.
Well, one thing is, this is something I have done in the Facebook group before, but well, first, I mean, Vic McLeod, who I'm always going on about, he was going to be the space specialist. So I guess he was going to take over from his brother Ace in that category.
Even there, like, I think it made sense to cut him, because essentially, Ace, like, how many stories can they have specifically in space? Those can be covered by Orbital Interceptor. So it's like saying, okay, there's Max for the shallow waters, and Jax, Ray, for his brother, for deep deep sea experiments. Or you can have like Jake Rockwell, for the normal terrain, like off-road. And there's, I don't know,
Blake Rockwell.
Blake, yeah, thank you, Blake Rockwell, or Slate Rockwell. That was one of the options for his name, Slate Rockwell, for or Blake Rockwell, for, like, I don't know, like swamp specialist. Like, how far can you stretch it?
Well, see, the thing is, we are talking about relatively realistic military strategy and storytelling logic versus the need to keep creating new figures for a successful toy line. So, yeah, I'm sure that's a problem Kenner would have run into if Centurions had continued long enough, but it's a problem I'm sure they would have loved to have had. Or maybe they just would have gone the real Ghostbusters or Batman route and just keep recycling the same group of characters over and over. Although with the Ghostbusters and Batman, they didn't own those properties. And I mean, with a property they did own, like a Mask, that kept introducing new characters year after year.
Yeah, yeah. So, I'm not as experienced with Mask as probably I should be, but yeah, I totally get what you mean, because if the line is successful, I'm sure they would have created new Centurions, new toys, or new weapon systems at least. So the question is, if we hypothetically ask the writers or the toy designers, who would have more information about it? Because we spoke, last year with Alton Takayasu, who designed most of the, like, who designed basically Max's armaments. and he didn't really like. He had a lot of useful information and a lot of great stories, but even he didn't know if there were any plans for new characters or anything new beyond the first season or the first two seasons.
Yeah, but all I can do is give you the idea I had for a bunch of new Centurions, which I came up with these around 1990 or so, and I have put them in the group. And well, why not kill some time by bringing them up here?
Oh,
Yeah,
sweet. So what's the story of that, Mark? How like when did you write those? What was the idea? Did you want to submit it to Kenner maybe or Hasbro or to some fan fiction or what was the plan with it?
well, I was just fooling around. I knew that I couldn't submit to Kenner because Centurions was already dead at this point. I mean, yeah, by the time I started buying the toys, they were already on clearance, which is why I had so many of them because I mean, I remember I got Detonator at Toys R Us for $2.
Do not push my buttons. Do not push my buttons. I got a
Okay,
good
I'm
deal
sorry.
on
I'm
them, but
sorry.
not that good. That's you're good. You're good.
Okay, I mean, okay, yeah. Well, eventually we're going to be able to build time machines, and well, we'll see what things happen then. But anyway, so I had my own space guy. He was going to be named Sir Arthur Castle, and he was basically going to be a riff on Centurions as successors to the armored knights of old, which was an idea that the TV show did briefly in the Merlin episode. And then I was going to
Hmm.
have a hostile environment specialist like a low light. No, not low light. Uh, I'm trying to remember the guy's name from GI Joe. I'm going to look him
There
up.
was actually, there was actually a subline for for hazmat kind of like toxic operations. Like they had the Toxo Vipers, and so there was basically a bunch of guys. They had those water cannons, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, that came later. This guy was from the 80s, and he was actually in the TV show and Airtight. That's the guy I'm thinking of.
Okay, okay. Because I
Yeah,
think Ozone was also a guy who was a hazard specialist.
yeah. See, when Hasbro wanted to come up with new characters, they just come up with two guys who did the same thing. But anyway, so this guy would be the Centurion's equivalent to Airtight, and his name
Hmm.
was Daniel Lyons, and he was from Kingston, Jamaica, and I imagine him as a bald black guy looking like the character actor Charles S. Dutton, who was, I think he was one of the prisoners in that one alien movie that took place on the prison planet.
But what's his name? Charles S.
Dutton, Dutton. He also had his own sitcom called Rock, which aired on Fox for a while.
Oh, okay. Now I've just Googled him. Okay, yeah, he was in Alien 3.
Okay, yeah. And I was going to have a samurai slash martial arts specialist named I think Hiro Watanabe or something like that. And then I was
Oh,
going to have
you're making the Asian guy the martial arts specialist. Hmm.
okay, that is stereotypical. I admit it. But then, well, no more stereotypical than John Thunder. But anyway, and then I was going to have my female Centurion. She would be a blonde French woman named Bianca LeBlanc, who would be the winter operations specialist, and she would be an Olympic champion skier who and skis would be part of her assault weapon systems, and she would be doing
She would
all
be
the
the snow specialist.
yeah, that's what she would do. Yeah, if the
Uh-huh.
Centurions had to fight in like the snowbound forest or something, she would be there. And since she was an environmentalist, she would also be donating time, money, and effort to clean up the area after the Centurions and the Doom drones were done battling it out. And she also would have been John Thunder's girlfriend.
Interesting. Do you think environmental themes would be as topical nowadays. I'm not playing devil's advocate. I'm just like wondering, as they were in the 80s, or do actually current children's shows talk about the environment as much as they did back then? Because they already had these segments at the end of like GI Joe and Centurions about how to protect the environment. But I'm curious if actually that would get more attention, or it's not a thing they do in cartoons anymore.
Well, I'm not sure about current cartoons. I don't know. I don't watch them as much as I should. I mean, and also let's not forget Captain Planet, which was based on environmental concerns, and Toxic Crusaders dabbled in it too. But my point is, this environmental stuff, it's not going away in real life, and it shouldn't go away in fiction either.
Don't forget, by the way, that Rex Charger was a scientist. So maybe it would be also interesting to, if you in your idea, because I know you like diversity, and those themes are very important for you personally as well. To maybe have in your concept, people from different walks of life, when it comes to one is very educated, the other one is more like a street smart guy. Do you have any ideas about that?
Well, now off the top of my head, I could come up with something like that. But yeah, I mean, you could say that Jake Rockwell was the street smart guy, but there's always room for more people of various specialties on the team, I think, and it would be just good to have a diverse mix of specialties and personalities in the group, and just see where the storytelling takes you. And of course, in the end, they're all going to be yelling "Power Extreme" and blowing up doom drones together. But yeah, you can have plenty of stuff that is interesting in addition to that.
Interesting, interesting. Actually, I was as you were saying that, I was thinking, would be it would be interesting to have different types of Dune drones that are not like the ones we had before. Like, it would be interesting to have human-like Doom drones, which could be either, you know, they would be able to blow themselves up, or just infiltrate, human installations, bases, and you know protected facilities, and then they would be able to transform, or convert into some different type of robot, not unlike maybe kind of like the themes of Terminator, where there are these infiltrators, because it was most of the combat between between the heroes and the Centurions and the and Doc Terror's forces, and even other enemies, were really like, once they got their weapons, it was just like it was like a big fight scene with explosions and missiles and beams all over the place. So I wonder if other enemies would make the Centurions require different ways of combat, not heavy machinery, maybe.
Well, yeah, that would be a good way to expand both the toy line and the storytelling possibilities of the cartoon. By the way, speaking of your idea of sort of human drones, do you remember Denver is Down? Okay, well, this is the episode. It's one of the original five where Doc Terror basically sinks the city of Denver so he can take it over, and one of the things that happens in it is that he hires some mercenaries to help him, and I think he goes even further with turning them into cyborgs than he did with Hacker. They have like there's a scene where you have like a bunch of vehicles, like a motorcycle and a tank and stuff, and they're like these
Oh yeah,
vehicles that
I
have
remember. Like,
yeah.
there was one that was like a kind of like a bike or like a quad, and the guy in the middle seemed like he was in a wheelchair, and the two separate sides of the this four-wheel thing could separate into bikes, and each one was kind of like fused with one of these mercenaries. I remember that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. One was fused with a helicopter.
Yeah, you basically have these what amounts to vehicles with human heads sticking out of them, and
Yeah.
that is pure nightmare fuel, and could also be a good thing to do with the toy line.
Nightmare Fuel. Yeah.
Yeah, that is an expression from Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah, I know,
For
I know, I know, I know.
anything that is scary, especially if it's not meant to be. But yeah, I mean, certainly it's at least as valid as taking a shark and a panther and turning them into cyborgs, which those would have been cool toys. But I mean, we can do other stuff as well.
Yeah, my take on the show, just to add to basically this discussion, my concept would be having essentially the same characters, the same armaments, but essentially technically produced in a more up to date way. I'm not saying 3D animation because um, I think that's still not on the level where I think it would be cool. But I think it would be a good idea to essentially have, kind of like a throwback feeling about it compared to the original with the same characters. One dilemma I'm actually considering is whether to make it a children's show or whether to actually focus it on young adults and adults. Like a lot of Japanese stuff, anime is focused specifically on adult audiences. So you talked about the nightmare fuel elements. I would actually, I think, enjoy a mature Centurions adaptation where basically the idea of cyber technology and man and machine interfacing, and where does machine end, or I'm saying, sorry, where does man end and machine begin, once you start adding more and more mechanical or cyber elements to your body. And that would be, and basically that would, the more nightmare fuel elements you would add, the more awesome it would be for a adult themed show. The question is, would a an American cartoon, studio or film studio create something that has less merchandising options because it's aimed not at children but at adults? I'm wondering.
See, the thing is, I think you might be able to have it both ways because you see some of the stuff that's been made for children in the last few years, like two recent shows I love, Gravity Falls and The Owl House. They both have some pretty scary stuff in them, and I think that Centurions could do stuff that is pretty sophisticated storytelling and still be at a content level that is safe for at least older kids. I mean, you look at reruns of the original series on Boomerangs. They're rated TVY7 FV for fantasy violence, and I don't see why the new show couldn't have a similar rating.
Or maybe another alternative to that would be having, just like with other DC and Marvel projects, having a more mature take on the show, for adults, and having a more um, child oriented, simplified, cartoon thing for kids.
I guess we could do that. Like, do you remember GI Joe Resolute?
The title rings a bell, but not the content.
Okay, this is a GI Joe cartoon made especially for adults a few years back. It actually aired on Adult Swim, and part of the premise was that Cobra Commander was actually fooling around all this time and really is a competent, terrifying villain, which he proves by blowing up Moscow.
Oh, so he would actually turn out to be a competent villain.
Yeah, and also the characters are actually allowed to kill each other in this thing.
So GI Joe and Cobra characters died, not just the copy paste army builder troopers.
Yeah, practically the first shot was you see Bazooka's corpse because someone from the Cobra has killed him.
Oh snap! Wow. Do a lot of popular characters die, or do any of the main characters actually die?
I don't remember offhand. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I gotta tell you, uh, I mean, I was impressed with the quality of the animation and the central idea of doing a more mature take on the children's cartoon. Not so impressed with the story, especially because to me, I thought that I mean, if you actually blow up a big city like Moscow in the real world, that would be September 11th on steroids. Whereas in this cartoon, it had no more emotional weight. Oh, here's Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow fighting again. Only this time they might actually kill each other.
Yeah,
And so I just thought that it introduced this really horrifying and provocative premise and didn't treat it with the seriousness it deserved. It, I mean, either you don't blow up Moscow, or if you do, you commit to it and you examine all the ramifications of it.
that's an interesting take. Yeah.
But well, thank you for letting me get on a soapbox about that years old cartoon. But I'm just saying that we could do something like that in Centurions and hopefully do it better.
Yeah, I would actually, now that I think about it, I would probably, because I might be a target audience for that more than the other concept, go for the more mature themes as opposed to simplifying it. Because now we talked about this with Alton Takayasu, that toys are being designed for younger children. One of the reasons being that essentially kids start playing with video games far earlier than in our generation. So essentially, toy manufacturers need to target young kids. Essentially, cartoons are the marketing material, the promo for toys. So I would say that, I would see the cartoon being simplified in a way, kind of like how they did with one or two cartoons for the Transformers franchise. I think one was um, Cyberverse, and the other one was Rescue Bots. I think that's what it was called. And essentially, I would still hope to
Yeah.
have the more serious version of that, kind of like cyberpunk elements, more gritty. I'm not saying, you know, the thing that was popular 10 years ago having a gritty reboot. I'm just saying that, a bit more similar to Japanese animation. I'm a fan of Western animation, not Japanese animation. I haven't really watched any anime, not really my thing, but I do appreciate a lot of the themes that they work with, and there are a lot of legendary, shows there and movies like Akira or Ghost in the Shell. So, just to name two of the classics. So essentially, I would totally, because Centurions was animated in the Far East, not in America. I would totally imagine that, that more input from them.
Yeah, yeah, the show was produced by Ruby Spears, but a lot of the actual animation was done by Sunrise, which is one of the legendary Japanese studios. And anyway, going back to your idea about mature stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think that you could do Centurions on the PG-13 level of, say, Marvel Cinematic Universe and get away with it. Or you could do it the way DC does it, whereas, I mean, you have this cute, brightly painted little Joker toy that you can buy for a little kid, and when the kid grows up, he or she can watch Joaquin Phoenix shooting people.
Hmm. Actually, I wonder if we talk about Centurions joining a shared universe. Um, what company does, or Warner does which of the franchises, Marvel or DC?
DC.
DC. So basically, can you picture? I mean, to me, now that I think of it, because DC is Superman, Batman, I don't. I think they would be okay with having Batman crossover, but Superman, no. Like I prefer to think of the Centurions universe as a place where technology is the only superpower, and wealth that you can have. So that's why I was a big fan of the original Iron Man trilogy, but not. I haven't even watched any of the movies once they kind of introduced the whole cinematic universe mishmash, because I don't want to have a somewhat credible science-based superhero fight, even if it's, of course, it's science fiction, fight Superman, or maybe, no, I'm sorry, I'm just like mixing that up, but like fighting like the Hulk, or fighting Thor, who is like, based on Norse mythology. So because I know Bruce Banner, like the Hulk, is also kind of science-ish based. So yeah, I would not be into that.
And for that matter, if you get your way, there goes the Hulkbuster armor. I mean, if you got your way with Iron Man, there goes the Hulkbuster armor, which he designed specifically to take down the Hulk.
Yeah, honestly, I would have kept Iron Man as a separate storyline, or maybe introduce, tech based, or more, should I say, credible other characters. Like, to me, it was just a mess once, like they had Thor and Iron Man, and then added basically normal humans, like that, Scarlett Johansson's character was like, oh, what can you do?
Black Widow.
Yeah, Black Widow, who's just basically just to me, it was just, okay, eye candy, not something I personally enjoy that much in such a movie, but it was just like, oh, she's a really good fighter. But yeah, if someone can shoot a rocket at you, how good can you be a good fighter if someone snaps their finger and kills kills people? How what does good fighting skills mean? So, just to take this back to, the Centurions, to me, I would prefer them to exist, even if there's a crossover, exist within a world, or an expanded world, where like magic and humanoid aliens aren't really involved, because that would just, if basically Jake Rockwell is a marathon runner, Max Ray is a good swimmer, that's all they can do with their, fighting skills if they don't have the weapons. The show's main idea is that they use these fantastic weapons, which are, based on science. And so it would totally mess up the concept. Like, like, if Doctor, when, it happens a bunch of times on the show that their wrist communicators are taken away from them, and then Doctor steps on them and like, ha, or attacker, and like, ha ha, now you're screwed. So imagine if like a superhero could just like use their laser eye beams, like Cyclops or Superman, and then the guys are basically, defenseless. I don't like the shift in power level.
Okay,
Sure,
can
sure,
I
sure.
say a couple things here? Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, long before we got all these interconnected movies, the DC and Marvel comic book universes were based on the idea of taking all these characters of different power levels that were owned by the same publisher and putting them together in the same world. So, yeah, the Marvel movies were certainly just taking after that. And as for DC, I think it's everything that of their three major icons. Superman and Wonder Woman have superpowers, and Batman doesn't. He is just like an ordinary man who uses his wits and his gadgets, and yet he is as popular as the other two.
He does have a superpower, the best superpower of all, you know, comic book kind, which is wealth.
He never he never gives up.
Wealth, Mark, wealth. He's rich. Money can trump any other
Oh yeah, okay.
superpower. He basically, and yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. He's probably one of the most popular of their universe. Um, and it's because essentially, he like, I think, like, he start in Detective Comics. That's I might be
Yes,
mistaken,
he did.
but he did it. Cool. So essentially, he is a modern detective. He uses his brains. He uses his gadgets. So he's kind of like uh, someone we kind of feel that we can aspire to. I think a lot of fans like him because of that. It's because, and when Bane broke his back, in the comics books. It shows that basically he's fragile. He's not like, oh, you cannot do that to Superman. No, he's a human being, and I think that's a good element to add to a reboot of the Centurions or a new series, that the characters that show more weakness within the characters, just as you show maybe a human side to Doctor, to Hacker, show maybe a darker side to some of the the people involved with the Centurions, if not the main characters, maybe Crystal, or or show weakness of the characters. For example, they did this with Tony Stark. I think they had this in the 90s or the 80s when he had alcohol problems. So I don't want to go as far as to say, okay, I don't know, Max should have drinking problems, or Ace should be a molester, and or something, like have sexual deviances, or something. But maybe something like, maybe let's say Crystal started on the wrong side. Like she was a brilliant scientist, and she initially worked for Dog Terror or like another evil organization, and then she defected to the good guys because due to her assistance, people died. And maybe she's the reason she's like with the Centurions is that she's looking for atonement. So motivations, because a kids show in the 80s didn't really need no motivation beyond good guys versus bad guys. Like they were talking about Cobra, the terrorist organization, but I'm not really sure they were terrorists, because they were more like a private army. Or I'm not really sure if terrorist is a good word for Cobra. So that's why I'm saying, the more motivation there is, the more narrative behind the characters, the more exciting storylines you can create, like Zone Dancer, and Crystal's past, for example.
Yeah, I mean, something like your idea for Crystal, I don't know if I would want that exact idea, but of her, being responsible for somebody's death, but something like that could work. Yeah. And you were talking about bringing a human side to the villains. Okay, Hacker already has something of a human side, which is actually in the original TV series. Like, for example, do you remember one of my favorite episodes of the show, Return of Captain Steel?
That was the one where, yeah, where they kind of created a copycat lookalike of Crystal's former lover. Yeah.
No, no, that was you only live twice. Return of Captain Steel is the one where Terror and Hacker go to a Polynesian island because they have something that Terror wants, and okay, uh, Hacker happens to look exactly like an astronaut who
Yeah,
visited
yeah, yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, back in
Yes,
the
I
day.
remember now. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, and so he becomes friends with them, and when Doc Terror wants to blow up the island with his new super weapon, Hacker actually stops him, and only the audience knows that he's done it. And then there was the better
Right.
half where, yeah, he and Terror are actually captured and separated for a while, and he reverts to childlike docility. So yeah, I mean, maybe you could do a thing about how Hacker wouldn't be as bad a person without Terror's evil influence, and maybe the Centurions could, work on him and get him to turn against Terror.
Yeah, and one thing that we also discussed before. I know your main wanna be guy, or not, like your basically your canceled guy who you want to see is, of course, Vic. My main person that I would want to see in the cartoons would be Garrett. The who appeared in the comic books, as he was the mercenary who Doctor hired to steal the prototype of the Centurion's outfit, or the exoframe. And so I'm thinking it would be interesting to basically show unlikely alliances in the story, where there's a bad guy like Garrett, or maybe even Hacker, or even Doctor and the Centurions in a season finale joining forces in a multi-part episode, to fight something even bigger than them. And then of course at the end, Terror goes back to being one of the bad guys. But it would be interesting to how they be able to, for example, like the guys need heavier firepower, and this alien force or whatever, like this other evil whatever, um captures or takes over Skyvault, and then Doc Terror will use like reconfigure his Doom drones to basically use them as weapon systems, like provide them as weapon systems to the Centurions. And you could have like Jake would combine his damaged swing shot with with one of the drones, like a what was a traumatizer, or what was the six-wheeled one? Do you remember which
Awesome
didn't receive
Auger.
a toy? No,
Awesome
the
Auger.
drone. No, that's
Oh,
a
oh,
weapon system.
oh! I'm
The
sorry.
the drone.
I think that would be Groundborg.
Groundborgs, thank you. Yeah, so imagine combining a damaged swing shot with a groundborg, because they kind of had similar, functions, or maybe using or hooking up Jake and Fire Force with a missile from a traumatizer. So basically, it would allow kids replay a bit, like if you had new toys to combine, even if they wanted to play out an actual episode, combine actual toys, good guy toys and bad guy toys.
Yeah, I think that would be a cool idea. As for Terry joining forces with the Centurions, I think that actually happened in the TV series. Yeah. Let me check on that for a moment, because I know that he did it in the better half where. Oh yeah, the better half.
Yeah.
Okay, this is something I actually wrote for TV tropes. Enemy mine. In the better half and man or machine, he reluctantly allies with the Centurion to save himself when his own schemes put him in danger, along with the rest of the world, although he doesn't care about that.
That's what you wrote up.
Yes. Yeah, because he creates Uniborg and it gets out of control. He creates all the stuff for Gog and Magog, and that gets out of control. Yeah, and in Man or Machine, remember Gog is the alien supercomputer that Terra joins forces with, and Magog is its sort of computerized flunky.
So that, yeah, that's actually interesting. And yeah, maybe even seeing multiple evil factions, or like Destro had his own private force. I think they were called the Iron Grenadiers
Yes.
in GI Joe. Like within Cobra, there would be a sub faction working for Doctor, like mercenaries, but not as weird as the ones that you mentioned that fused with like actual vehicles, but kind of like I would say kind of like Zartan's, the Dreadnoks in GI Joe, like a group that would affiliate itself with Dog Terror, from time to time.
Well, yeah, that would be a good way to bring in more villains, and maybe give them their own agenda that not even Terror knows about.
Yeah. Just basically, I think one of the appeals of GI Joe was that there were so many characters that could play with, and basically they forced writers like Ken Hasbro forced writers to actually come up with diverse stories for a lot of characters, because they said, we want to see these characters on screen, make as many characters appear in episodes and as many toys as you can. So that's why I think, was it Shipwreck who had his own episode where he was, I think it was Shipwreck, wasn't he, who woke up, and he was like a staged you know island thing where like he had his wife and he had his kid, and basically he didn't remember any of that, and it was just a ploy to get information, like top secret info out of him, and he was super confused, and he recognized that it was just a elaborate Cobra ploy to get the info out of him. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, the classic two-part episode. There's no place like Springfield.
Was it that? Yeah. I I saw it on YouTube or something. I'm thinking, maybe these elements like adding more characters and fleshing them out um, would be interesting. Of course, there are fewer characters on Centurions originally. There are fewer weapon systems, so I wonder if there could a layer could be added, because I think if even in Zone Dancer they didn't really use weapons that much. It was more of a narrative thing than a shootout episode, if I remember correctly.
Well, there was a lot of narrative stuff in there, but of course they had to have scenes with the weapons because that's what the show was about. But they worked in and out of the narrative, which I thought was a good thing. Well, Zone Dancer, yeah, it had some stuff that was just about the Crystal Clone and her relationship with Gabe Knight, the Private Eye. But then, of course, they had to have some stuff with the Centurions and the weapon system because that's what the show is based on. And I thought that Michael Reeves did a good job of weaving those obligatory scenes in and out of the narrative.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. That's why it would be great, Mark, to have writers on the show. I recently saw one of the writers actually post on our Facebook group page that he's happy to answer questions. So maybe we could reach out to him and have an episode recorded, because I wonder how each of the writer had their own worldview, their own interests reflect in the stories. Like whether the cyberpunk episodes all were written by a few, or maybe the same writer, and how weird stories were written by another specific author, so or screenwriter. So I'm really curious, like whether there are patterns in the episode writers work.
Well, actually, there is Michael Reeves said, well, if they want science fiction, we're going to give them science fiction, and so he allowed the hard science fiction and outer space episodes like Sungrazer, Showdown at Skystalk, stuff like that. And then you get somebody like Michael Charles Hill, who was the creator of. I'm trying to remember the name of the reporter who was in Live at 5 and Film at 11, because she was his creation, and he had her in those two episodes. And then you get like Jerry and Carla Conway creating Cassandra Cross, the witch, and writing two episodes involving her. So yeah, that happens from time to time on Centurions.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to have writers on the show. I don't know how many are still with us. Whether I know that the story editor that you were in touch with, he's not around anymore, right?
Yeah, Ted Peterson. Yeah, he's been dead for years. And also, we just lost Michael Edens, who, if I remember correctly, wrote the Warrior episode. So yeah.
Oh wow.
I remember I used to correspond with him. He was a good guy. I'm sorry we never got to talk to him. By the way, Jenny Rivers, that was the name of the character from Live on S5 and Film at
Mm.
11.
Do you have any stories from this guy you just mentioned? Any specific info that he provided you that might be interesting to the guys listening to this?
No, I've never been in contact. I've never been in contact with Michael Charles Hill. Don't know if he's alive or not. I just noticed that he created this character and featured her in two episodes. And yeah, I mean, Michael Reeves, will be great to talk to him, but unfortunately, he's had health problems for the last several years. So I don't know how able he would be to do that. But I mean, obviously, the ones who are still willing and able to talk, yeah, we're going to try and go after them. So stay tuned, listeners of this podcast.
Definitely. So yeah, we definitely want to have as many guests on as possible, because as fun as it is sharing our thoughts, I'm sure you guys are looking for the info on from the actual sources, as in toy designers and writers or people involved with the show. So we might actually leave for a brief summer break again, like last year, just to try and get in touch with some people involved with the show and bring you some new info when we come back. And like we said before, if you have any photos to share of your collection, feel free to find us on Facebook. There's only one big Centurions group out there, so we'd be really happy if you haven't joined yet. If you joined, if you're already there, just show us your collection, and if you have any questions, just reach out to us. And yeah, just be part of this really great community. We're already like growing in numbers, and we're actually at 1,800 members. We passed 1,800, I think, or we're around that number. And yeah, just don't be a stranger. If you have any comments about the podcast, we would be happy to hear from you. And keep an eye out for new additions to potentially to your collection, because eBay is a really great place to find even unopened figures. Like I just saw a an unopened mint dog terror in its original packaging and with all the original items intact a few hours ago. And yeah, there's still a lot of things to buy out there, Centurions related. We'll do an episode about merchandise as well later on. Mark, anything else you feel like adding before we sail off?
Well, for an episode that we did basically by the seat of our pants, I think that we hopefully didn't do too badly here, although that will be up to the listeners to decide.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. We did plan on doing a couple of episode reviews, but I think when we tried that the first time, uh, we really had too much to say. Actually, we're really involved in the story and the show. So we'll try to make those episodes again and make them bite size, um, and yeah, and bring more episode reviews. We'll have hopefully Nick, our third host, basically back for future episodes, hopefully, and again bring you interviews and just insider info on the show.
Can I say something here? And Yuri, feel free to cut this out if you don't want it included.
Sure.
But yeah, okay, listening to this podcast, Yuri and I did a review of The Sky is on Fire, the first Centurions episode. We haven't released it yet because it ran 3 hours. Now, I I don't know if you would want to listen to a podcast that long, but or if you would want us to try and cut it down. But let us know either way, and we'll see if we can accommodate you.
Definitely. I think if there's interest in it, he said, wondering if there would be any. If there's any interest, we could also later on do something like a riff tracks thing or a mystery science theater thing for the episodes where we watch it and we comment it,
Oh, that would be
comment on the
wonderful.
episodes real time. But yeah, that would need, hopefully, beyond the technical requirements to record it. It would also need a way for people to watch the episodes legally, and because right now the only things that you can order are those few DVDs that don't really contain all the episodes, or you can watch the episodes illegally, and I'm not really sure how long that's going to be around.
Well, I mean, Warner Archive does sell the entire series. I mean, you have to get 3 sets to get all of it, but it's all out there. And also, I mean, maybe we could do what Riff Tracks does, and they do a commentary track that you can sync with the original movie that they don't have the rights to.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing I gotta say that if we do this, I think we should do it right in that they just don't watch a movie for the first time and say whatever they're gonna say. They actually watch it several times and they have a script prepared, and maybe that's the way we should do it.
Yeah, and maybe I'm not sure if we should be in the same space so that, I would have to visit you guys or you would visit me or something, or if you can do it online. Hopefully technology now permits that. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective what we could do with the show, because we're thinking about topics that we could do for you guys, and really don't want to bore you with so miscellaneous things that you would just unsubscribe and never come back. So yeah, hopefully we can do a schedule where it's one episode that's an interview, and one episode every second episode essentially that's just us, um bring you something exciting and interesting. So maybe that's a riff track, maybe that's an episode review, or just news about new collectibles, who knows.
Well, I would be in favor of that. And anyone who wants us, anyone who wants to listen to us going, "Hey, Doc Terror is stupid, won't you?" for a half hour, I would be in favor of that too. I love MST3K.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. So
Oh, can I say what?
yeah, Mark.
Can I add one last thing here? I almost forgot about this, but another animated series I watch right now is Bob's Burgers, and I'm thinking that would be a great crossover. I mean, you could have Tina is Max, Gene is Jake, Louise is Ace, Linda as Crystal, Bob is Doc Terror, and Teddy is Hacker.
And at this point, I would like to remind our listeners that yes, Mark seemingly has lost his medicine, and yes, we're trying to find them for you. So these ideas come from a mind that probably would appreciate some therapy. Mark, how could you think of such a thing, like desecrating Centurions with Bob's Burgers?
Oh, come on. I only skipped my meds for 2 days.
There you go. That's your limit. That's when the symptoms start appearing. No, I mean, wow. Yeah, I'm not. I don't know if you guys think that's a good idea. Let us know. I'm not a fan of mixing comedy that much. Maybe Rick and Morty, but even that would be a stretch. Like Rick. I don't know, or having all three characters basically be like horrible people, or Max being the straight guy, being trying to keep them together, Ace being a pervert, drunkard who like insults women, and Jake being like a hyper aggressive guy who picks fights with random people all the time, and then Crystal being burnt out and just not caring about the whole thing. I don't know. It would be interesting.
Well, see, that's the thing I like about Bob's Burgers. You like these characters. You want them to be happy. But, well, I mean, we're getting into, we're already over an hour, and we're getting into tangent territory here. So, yeah, maybe we should end this while I go look for my meds.
Good idea. So, yeah, thank you guys for listening and for offering an hour of your time to listen to us just talk about nonsense. And until next time, Mark, would you do the honors, please?
Power Extreme!